I'm talking for this segment, to Tom Doyle. He has a book coming out in a few months, Killing Christians, Living the Faith Where It's Not Safe to Believe. He's with the E3 Partners, which equips Christians with the training and tools they need to make a lasting impact in the world. And every year they send thousands of people on hundreds of short-term mission trips that address critical issues and promote the gospel. Tom Doyle, welcome back to Understanding the Times Radio.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jan. I so appreciate it.
Tom, I noticed on your Facebook, this is several weeks ago, so it's worse now, but here's what you wrote back then. All Christians in Mosul are gone now. About 3,000 of them remained until last weekend. To add insult to injury, the Islamic State terrorists took every woman's wedding ring from them as they left Mosul. Later on, they bragged about it on Twitter, claiming that they humiliated the Christians. They also boasted Mosul is Christian-free. And then you go on to write, for the first time in well over 1,700 years, there was not one worship service yesterday in the famed city of the Bible known as Nineveh. In the Old Testament, the prophet Jonah preached here, and the city repented in mass. The prophet Ezekiel lived here during Israel's Babylonian captivity. But Tom Doyle, there is little outcry. How come?
You know, for some reason, Jan, it seems like if someone burns a Quran, pastor in America or in Europe, there's international outcry, but thousands of Christians are being slaughtered. In fact, for the first time, we're hearing about rallies to support the Christians that have left Mosul and are in danger in Syria. And finally, the body of Christ is starting to mobilize, which is great. But we're not hearing a lot from the news. 3,000 Christians leave Mosul, and supposedly it's Christian-free after all those centuries. And then they're in Erbil in the Kurdish section. But I just talked to an Iraqi leader today, and he said ISIS has announced that they're on their way into the Kurdish area, and they've already started attacking. So, they don't have a lot of options left. They back up to Iran. That's not a place they can go to. Probably can't get to Turkey. So we need to lift up our brothers and sisters in this whole Kurdish area that is filled with Christians that have fled from ISIS' just destructive, demonic path.
Demonic. We have the silence of, I think, the Pope. We have the silence of, as I said in my intro, where's the World Council of Churches? Where's the National Council of Churches? Where's the World Evangelical Alliance? Are all of these people and agencies AWOL?
Well, they really have been. And to show you how bad it has gotten, the Prime Minister of Israel stood up and spoke out for Christians in Syria. And recently it had to do with the boycott and divestment movement, Christian groups that are saying they don't want to buy anything in Israel and want to invest there. They want to just steer clear of Israel. And they asked Benjamin Netanyahu about that, and he said, well, that doesn't really sound like Christians to me. And he said, the reason is we have a thriving democracy in the midst of the Middle East, and this is one of the rare places where Arabs and Muslims can actually vote.
That's right.
And he said,
exactly
well,
right.
if they want to boycott a country, why don't they get on a bus and go over to Syria where they're hanging your Christians on crosses? And if you do go over there, he said, you'll have to be in an armored bus because the government will try to kill you. So why is there no outcry for what's happening in Syria, Christians being hung on crosses?
Representative Frank Wolf, I'm grateful for him. He's a champion of religious freedom. He's a Republican representative from Virginia, and he told Congress Christianity as we know it, at least in Iraq, is being wiped out. He says, I believe what is happening to the Christian community is genocide. And then he says, where's the West? The silence is deafening. And then he says the West, particularly the church, needs to speak out. As William Wilberforce, the British parliamentarian and abolitionist, famously told his colleagues, having heard all of this, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you did not know. I read this online. This is our friends at the Anglican Communion News Service recently spoke to the vicar of Baghdad, the Reverend Canon Andrew White, who begged for the prayers and support of the Christian world at large. Reverend White spoke out about conditions on the ground in ISIS-controlled Iraq. Every day we think that the crisis here cannot get worse, and every day it does. Yesterday, over 1,500 people were killed. Iraq seems like old news, yet things just get worse and worse here. It is as if hell has broken out here, and nobody cares. And I think that's what gets to me, Tom. I don't even know that the pulpit is talking about it. I don't know that the people in the pews, I'm sure they would care if they would know. I don't think they're getting this information. information. How do we get them this information?
Number one, pastors have to stand up and they need to pray the next Lord's Day about the believers in Iraq and what they're undergoing, and Syria too. Mm-hmm. And I think, Jan, it's very much like Nehemiah's day when they were building the wall and they had all the opposition against them. Many of the workers had a sword in one hand to protect themselves and a hammer in the other hand to do the work of God. We're called as people in ministry to do the work of God. We're praying that the government will step up, but ultimately as believers we need to join together in prayer. We have a Facebook site, 838, the number 8, and spelled out 30, and then 8 is the number, and it's for believers to get an update each day from these difficult areas for where people are in prison, persecution, or danger. And so we update it every day. They can pray, they can get involved, and we're just trying to get the word out with a groundswell. I'm in a lot of churches that we're not hearing about it. They're not announcing it. And so we have to get the word out. So I thank God for your program because you're on it. Pray that others would devote time to it on other national syndicated radio programs because there is a genocide going on. Christians are being hung on crosses in Syria. And Jen, in the middle of it, God's intervening.